Hello, I'm Phil Svitek, 360 Creative Coach, and welcome to my vlog where it is both my mission and my pleasure to highlight my creative journey in hopes of inspiring you and giving you specific takeaway, all with the hope that your journey can be at least a little bit easier. Now, before I fully dive into things, I would love to take the opportunity to invite you to subscribe if you haven't already, that we get all the various lessons and episodes that I put out right when I put them out. Thank you if you just did, and thank you if you already were. It truly does mean a lot to me, as I hope it does to you. So, let's get into it, right? We are, as I made mention last time, in the business end, really, of all of our development for the animated feature that I've been working on. And what I mean by this is that in November, we're going to be starting to pitch. And so the proof of concept, the pitch deck, the script, and all that is coming together to be ready for when that happens. And a big part of last week was talking with various people and essentially interviewing them about what would the budget be for our movie. You know, what are we asking for? And at the end of the day, the thing about budgets, ultimately, A, they can range, and B, kind of whatever restrictions you're given, you'll find a way to make that work. Like there's oftentimes movies that might have, in the tens of whatever millions of dollars, and that might seem like a lot, but ideally it would be 100 million, but you only have 70 million. So it's like, okay, you pare it down and you pick stuff that works and whatever, right? So art, in some sense, is about making concessions, right? And right now we're trying to reach a number that's like, okay, what's a good ask that gives us enough headroom, but at the same time isn't crazy, right? Like it's reasonable, and there's a way for whoever, the studio is, the investor, the financiers, they can get a return on their money, right? So that's been kind of an interesting process, and, it's a learning process. I'm not someone that does budgets. The term for that is called a line producer. And yeah, it's very much needed, and the hard part about it is that you kind of need a script to be able to do it, right? Because you look at the script, you look at the number of scenes, the characters, this, that, and all the same stuff really applies to both animation as well as live action. It's just once you have that information, you filter it in a different way. So, we've been kind of doing preliminary stuff in that respect. Knowing that our script wasn't completely done, but it's close enough where we just want to kind of hit a range. And like with all things, it's better to have a dialogue with people you're going to be wanting to work with in advance, rather than, right when you need it. Because by having these conversations now, we can start to think about certain things, and they can start to understand the project. There's not that right away deadline pressure, right? It can be a little bit more creative. It can be a little bit more fun, stress-free. And so that was kind of a big part of what we were doing. We're also now finally, for a number of months, we've been revising the pitch deck, and part of it also has been, we could have gotten that done a little bit earlier perhaps, but the thing that kept us off was we wanted to have screenshots and other images from the animation to be able to insert into the pitch deck, which we didn't at the time have because it was a work in progress, right? Now we're much closer to the end, and so we have that available to us unlike before. And so that's being worked on, and kind of like all things, it's a mad dash to the finish line. It really is. And I don't think people like, one of the things I was thinking about, I don't think people realize how much time things really take. I mean, with a concerted effort, we've really been essentially doing, a meeting a week, a meeting every 2 weeks, since the start of, well, let's say mid-January, right? So that was like the pre-production for the teaser, and kind of coming up with that and talking about how that would work. Then, we got everything good at the end of March, and then we started, doing the animation, and here we are, kind of on the edge of the mid of September, right? And we progressed and whatnot. But what a journey when you look back at that it has been. Now, of course, for all of us on this project, it is kind of like a secondary thing. We all have our day jobs, we all have other responsibilities and stuff like that. So, in the grand scheme of things, if we were truly, if this was a full-time job, we could speed along, sure. But I'm very impressed with our progress and things of that nature. And it feels like there's still quite a bit to go, yes, but it's also great to see the finish line there and know that we are close and that it is coming together. Even the script, while we've continually, constantly been writing it, and I never felt that it was good enough to send out to people outside of our group, we did 3 days last week, not full days, but 2 hours each, where we really, look back at the outline, and we're kind of like, okay, beat by beat, based on the script, what's working, what do we need to change? And that's been very beneficial. It's that kind of adage where, when you marry somebody, 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2, it becomes 3, like a true good partnership. And it could be romantic, it could also be creative, it could be all these other things. But, 1 + 1 = 3, right? It might seem illogical, but, there's an exponential benefit in that regard when two minds come together. Well, the good news for us, for the first time in quite a long time, we had 3 minds coming together to work on this. And, it's good in the sense that everyone's bringing everything to the table. The downside is it can take a while because everyone is poking and prodding at every little detail. Well, why does this happen? Okay, well, what about this, right? So it's both in the sense that you're identifying potential issues, but you're also getting the solutions. And it is that process. You want that. That's the beauty is, now is the time to fix all those things. You don't want to end up on Honest Trailer or Everything Wrong With or Pitch Meetings. These are YouTube channels that essentially poke fun at various plot holes and inconsistencies and so forth in terms of movies. And I certainly don't want that, no movie's ever going to be 100% perfect, but to the extent that you can, you want it to, the truly good ones, they make sense. Let's just put it that way, right? And so by all 3 of us coming together, I said with 2 people, it's 1 + 1 = 3. Well, in our case, 1 + 1 + 1 = 10. That's the beautiful part about it. But you just have to have the patience because it is a grind. But it's a good grind because, as I said, people are coming up with solutions. And we got to, in those 3 days, we got about 65, 70%, let's say 65% of the way of the script. So we're not done yet in terms of re-outlining and figuring out, what goes where. We had to pause because, as I made mention, this isn't anyone's full-time gig. But I'm excited to resume this week. And what it has allowed me to do is really sit with what we've worked and take those ideas. And because we're very specific with the things, I can transpose them into the script. Now, even then, like for me, I always like to have an outline because it gives me a roadmap of where I'm going with things. But it still is very hard, in terms of the script, because now you got to translate it into believable dialogue, believable action. So, well, it's good that you have that roadmap, and again, we have those specifics of, like, we're really getting granular when I say, what's working and what's not. We're nitpicking the hell out of it, and coming up with very specific things of, okay, what works, what doesn't. And so it is easier to translate that to the script than it was in the past, but still, you still have to work towards that, right? And so, whereas before, one revision on an outline, like one beat sheet of a scene, could have taken an hour or two. Now it takes 20, 30 minutes. So better, but it still takes time, right? But I've enjoyed the process, and it's been good. And the nice part about, as well as all that, the closer we get to that, I've been talking with the animation supervisor, and now, they can have a clear vision of what we're going for. They always knew kind of the broad strokes, but now, as I may have mentioned, like when we're talking about budgeting it, they're able to take this and really start to at least give us a good range of, okay, it's got this many scenes, it's got this many characters, this many backgrounds, and here's what it would look like if we had a team of animators, 30 people, 40 people, 50 people, whatever. And, if we want to break it down, here's how long it would take if we did it in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, whatever. So we can start to see that coalesce in terms of time and money. So it's been an interesting journey, and it really feels like the grown-up stage of things, right? One of the other things that we're talking about, because certainly when I say like grown-up things, the budget needed for this movie, like as I mentioned, we're going for an ideal where we have some headroom, and that, in the grand scheme of things for a movie, not a lot in terms of what we're going to be asking, but certainly a lot for anything I've ever done, So, but in that sense, it's kind of getting over the fact that, this is a worthwhile investment rather than like, hey, just give me money. So it's kind of getting over that, and by having the budget and so forth, we can justify those numbers, right? The other kind of growing up aspect of all this is, when you work with line producers and so forth, they know various incentives, tax incentives, diversity incentives. Our animation team is in the Philippines. The sound team I'm working with is out of Colombia. So, okay, let's work with the Philippine Film Commission. Let's work with the Colombian Film Commission. Let's figure that out. What incentives can we get? Is there some money to be had? Things of that nature. Like you'd be surprised. And then also just looking at, okay, if we hire a voice actor that's like a well-known talent from another country, what's available to us there, right? All these different things, and it's a process, and you want someone knowledgeable within that. But you can certainly start to look for it. One of the reasons you want someone knowledgeable is, if anything, so they can point you. Like it's hard to know what you don't know, right? And I do appreciate, not everyone is necessarily like this, but I do appreciate people within our profession, and it happens in all professions, that are just very open with their knowledge, and so they'll share like, hey, here's what you need to look into and stuff like that. Sometimes they charge a consulting fee. Other times, people just do it for free, because it's like, I bumped my head, I want to make your journey at least a little bit easier. And in fact, that's the whole spirit of what I try to do is, my journey, I've benefited greatly from tremendous mentors, and I've also had to bump my head along the way. And so if I can, provide that path forward for anybody, then so be it. That's the wonderful part of all of this, right? So, and in fact, that's a nice transition into, I went to college in Emerson. Emerson College is a very prestigious film school, and they were celebrating the 10-year anniversary of Emerson LA with our building, right? So Emerson is located in Boston, but they've had an LA program for many, many years. But for most of those years, we didn't have a campus per se, right? And 10 years ago was the launch of Emerson LA, like Emerson's own building within LA. And it's a very big building. It's on Sunset, very famous boulevard, and so forth, right? So it's kind of like got a prime location. And so, it was a big celebration. It was a lot of fun. And, the reason I mention this as a tie-in is because a lot of the newer alumni, I give them a lot of credit for going up to whether me or anyone else that's older than them and essentially asking for guidance. And I met a lot of interesting people there that were at the start of their journeys, their careers. And, even if I couldn't help directly, I could at least offer the spirit of how they can go about things. But then there's other people that I learned that, want to get into animation specifically. So, am I this end-all be-all expert on animation? No, I'm not. Of course I'm not. But I found a way to progress this project forward, so I'll certainly share, what I know. And so that's what I did, and, wishing them the best of luck and so forth. And that was a lot of fun. Also, the good news last week is we found out that we will be going to Comic-Con LA this year to talk about the animation process. So we will be using our movie, The Arbiters, and what we've been working on as a case study of, how someone can approach their own animated movie. What's that process really look like? So that's very exciting. The team and I will be there. So we're specifically on October 5th, which is Saturday at 11 a.m. Okay. So if you're gonna be at Comic-Con LA, hit me up. Let us know. We'd love to meet you. If you have time, come to our panel discussion. We're really now that we have been confirmed that we are going to be there. We're going to really try to bring a lot to the table and make it as educational as possible and showcase, what we can bring. And, my team, rightfully, they said, hey, just can you ask the animation team if they're cool with non-final stuff, even though obviously we own all the stuff and we can do kind of whatever, it just might be nice to ask them, right? Just as a courtesy ask, and so, I let them know, hey, we got into Comic-Con LA, as was always the plan. Are you okay with us sharing the early concept art, the start of, the storyboards to what it is now? Not that we're going to show everything, but just, keep things just to highlight what the process looks like. And, yeah, they were totally on board. They're very excited for it because we're going to highlight their work. In fact, I don't know if pet peeve is the right word or not, but whenever I talk about my animation project to friends or people that I meet, they're like, oh, so you're drawing it? I'm like, no. I can't draw. I am very lucky that I have found great animators that I get to work with, and they're the ones making it. I am not the person. And so I love speaking about them because they are doing phenomenal work, and I want the world to know about them, right? They are truly phenomenal. So, but yeah, that was a really fun event, and it's interesting. I didn't see as many people from my grades that I knew. It was kind of a lot of older alumni and then a lot of newer alumni. Nothing in terms of, I'm not saying that as a negative, just kind of pointing it out as a statement of fact. If anything, it just made me and forced me to have to get out of my bubble, because there wasn't that safety net of people I knew, necessarily. It's like, okay, I got to go and meet the older and the younger people, essentially, and what do you do, and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, very fun event. Enjoyed a lot. And yeah, I enjoy it because of that. As I said, one of the things, I've said this in the past, not right now, but I hate the word networking. To me, I look at it as community building. And that's what I try to do. I try to just build community. Even if we only interact once, like, that's fine. Let's make it meaningful, to the extent that we can, right? So, anyway, that was that. Then the next day, so this is all kind of now in the weekend. So the Emerson LA thing was on Friday night. Saturday, I ended up, there was a thing I was supposed to do, but that got canceled. So it was quite serendipitous where I got to attend my friend Kristen Snyder's premiere of her finished documentary. So, by the way, you can check it out. I did an interview with her a while ago. The documentary is called One Dream Too Many. And it's a documentary that she's essentially been working on for 13 years at this point. Kind of like all of us, she had to start and stop because of money and, making sure she had all the footage and yada, yada. But after all this time, she is complete. She's in the film festival phase. So this movie got chosen to be part of the Silicon Beach Film Festival, which plays at the Chinese Theater in Hollywood. So a great theater. So yeah, I went. I surprised her by going, because I didn't RSVP. I just went, got a ticket through the festival and so forth. And it was great to see because, it's a movie that I've seen multiple times, but always kind of in various iterations. I consulted for the movie, helped get it over the finish line, and things of that nature. And now to see it, quote unquote, done, it's just something fun, right? I remember my premiere for Finding Love in Bogota. That is now called, it used to be called A Bogota Trip. So if you've ever heard me talk about A Bogota Trip, it is now retitled to Finding Love in Bogota, which is available on Amazon and Tubi. But that was my last movie that I did. And, we premiered back in 2022. And it was a packed house. It was all, various friends and people and people that their friends brought that I didn't necessarily know. But it was just such a magical experience, right? And I remember telling Kristen yesterday, just enjoy it. At this point, the movie is done. There's nothing, certainly not anything you can do between now and the screening. So just enjoy the experience of it. Everyone here is to support you. The movie that you made, so just trust that they will understand and see it for what your intentions were. And that's what it became, there was a warmth, a camaraderie. I can never say that word. You know what I'm talking about. But there was such a goodwill towards this project and such an enjoyment of her work, the culmination of it, and so forth. And that's really a special thing, And I often think about it. Listen, one of the pieces of advice that I gave to her is you want to go where you're going to get FaceTime with your audience. That's kind of my philosophy when it comes to film festivals, at least as it is now. Certainly as it was with, when we were screening Finding Love in Bogota. I just wanted FaceTime with the audience. And if that's all it ever was ultimately, then that was enough because, to see people's reactions, to be in their presence and to get to all experience it, it's a feeling that is really indescribable. It's such a magical moment to be able to share the movie with people, especially for the first time. So I'm glad. I'm glad she had that. I'm glad it went well. And yeah. So, and it's called One Dream Too Many, and you know, the aspect of it that's very inspiring is it talks about chasing your dreams and trying and never giving up, because as like the movie kind of becomes self-referential in the sense that it took 13 years to make this movie, but she never quit on it, and now she did it, right? So it's kind of inspiring in many ways for people to just try, you know, just try and go after what you want. And we all think we have to succeed or whatever, and it's like, you know what? Even if something is ultimately a hobby, let's say, like, it fills your soul. Go do it just because you love it. I'm surmising it in a very banal way, but that's kind of at least a part of it, right? And then after that, I went to see a play called, I can't quite say it, Cyrano de Bergerac. Very famous play by a French poet, Edmond Rostand. And this was done in I think the late 1800s, give or take. And there's been many adaptations and things like that, but it's a story I was not familiar with. And the reason, you know, I've kind of talked about this way back a year prior, so not necessarily this year, but in 2023, about just kind of trying things out that, you know, are, let's say, outside of my comfort zone that I normally don't do and stuff like that. So going to plays is not my usual thing. It's not like I've never been to a play, but it's not the first thing I think about. And for whatever reason, I just kind of started seeing advertisements for this play at the Pasadena Playhouse. And what really took me was Rosa Salazar was one of the leads in this. And she's an actress that I admire. She's done a ton of stuff, but in particular, she's in Amazon's Undone, which is one of my favorite TV shows that I think everyone should watch. So I was like, okay, you know what? I'm curious. Like, let me go check this out. I have no clue what this is about. You know, I didn't read the synopsis, whatever. I said, just Pasadena Playhouse. I've heard great things. Let me just go. And I tried to invite some people, but unfortunately, you know, people couldn't make it. But I was like, all right, why not? Let me just go. And I have to say, like, it was quite the experience. It was, you know, to see this play. Like, again, I went into it blind. I had no clue what I was going into. And everyone performed really well. And it just kind of hit me in many ways of watching these actors, how good they are. Because this is a very fast-paced play, and it's done very rhythmically because it's, you know, written by a poet. And so they have to convey emotion, they have to hit their timing, and obviously memorize their lines. You know, that's some of the things that go into it, right? And it just got me thinking, you know, there's just such a difference, or there is a difference between doing something for camera where you know you have another take and so forth. Not that you want to like flub a take, but there is a little bit of a safety net. Versus, you know, here it's like you just got to keep going. You know, there's no going back. Like, hey, let's start that again. And to see each and every one of these performers do it at such an incredible level, that's what I was taken most by. It was really a wonderful time. So I enjoyed it. I'm glad I went. You know, if you're in the LA area in the month of September, I recommend checking it out. I thought it was good. And the broader picture being that, like, hey, you know, if something is out there that you're curious about, test it out. You know, why not? Why not? It's experiences enrich us, right? So yeah, I had a lot of fun with that. And, you know, that's kind of what I've been up to as well. The last kind of final thing, I'm not going to go too into it, but, you know, I went to therapy earlier today, so this is now Sunday in terms of when I went. And yeah, that was very beneficial. And what's been fun's not the right word, but you know, even now more productive is in terms of the therapy I do. There's usually a protocol, and we explore things and whatever else. Now I'm getting to a place where I more so dictate the experience. So I made a list of essentially things that I was curious to explore, and you know, this is therapy where, you know, you can test if you have a negative response to something or a positive response. And the list that I made overall, it's interesting. You know, it was a very good hit list that it ended up being, right, of stuff that I did need to work on. So in that respect, yeah, that was very productive. Anyway, as always, feel free to ask any questions, give thoughts on your own of anything that I've talked about. And the questions, by the way, can be about the stuff that I talked about, the stuff that I didn't talk about, stuff you'd like me to talk about. You know, whatever it is, comment down below or hit me up on social media. You know, the greater aspect of all of this is to always try to provide some benefit. And these vlogs in particular, you know, I try to be anecdotal to instill the lessons that have been imparted on me or I learned along the way. So thank you, as always, for taking time to tune in. I appreciate you, and hope to see you next time.